Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and welcome to my episode 4 of my Legend of the Force spoiler review. So, this video is sponsored by Card Market, the biggest marketplace to buy and sell cards in Europe. So as usual, I rank cards on 4 different criteria. I'm either not excited about the card, I think it's either going to be bad or extremely niche. This one is when I'm not sure, because it comes down to the meta or comes down to the rest of the set, or simply just very new mechanics that are very difficult to evaluate in a vacuum without testing. Good cards that I'm confident will see some amount of play in competitive, and then finally the amazing card which I think are going to be are likely to be meta defining. They will either create new decks or they will have a huge impact on how much certain type of decks see play. So this is obviously, as usual, first impression in videos, so it's obviously kind of I haven't played with any of those cards, so take everything I say in the video in a grain of salt. I usually get it right, but it really, of course, depends a lot on certain cards. So the first thing I wanted to talk about in this video is obviously the new 25 HP base, which gives you new ways to gain the force. I actually was not confident we were gonna get all the ways to get the force. I mean, I knew we were gonna get isolated card, but the problem with isolated cards is that you need to draw them to be able to trigger the force. So maybe there's specific cards that allow you to get the force, but if you don't draw them, then you kind of. I didn't know we were getting new set of base that will give you the force in different ways, and we did. And those 25 HP base, of course, they trade 3 HP on your base, which is very significant. We know now how much 3 HP matters on the base when we see like Data Vault basically seeing play almost everywhere. And that's because every single HP on the base matters, because HP on your base does not only determine when you're gonna die, it's also determine how many actions you can play without being greedy. So for example, you're in a situation where your opponent has lethal, you have to take initiative super early, you have to get rid of those units, you have to be playing in a certain way that is very, very counterintuitive. You have to skip actions in order to keep yourself safe. And having 3 more HP allows you to actually be much more comfortable on the way you play, because it's not like in Magic where it's very easy to kind of like stop someone because everything blocks in the game. In Star Wars Unlimited, because of the back and forth nature of the game and because units do not naturally block each other, it's much more difficult to block someone. So every HP on the base matters for that reason. Because it gives you like this kind of like discussion that allows you to kind of take a bit more risk and really properly stabilize the game. And this is something that is very, very important. But obviously in the case of this base, the payoff is that you get to get the force very easily. All you need to do is control a unit with 4 HP or more, and you basically will get the force at the regroup phase, which are so this moment where you actually ready your resort basically. So it's very, very powerful, because now we have they actually printed quite a few 2-4 units in the game now, a unit with 4 health, which obviously makes it very easy to get the force right from the first turn of the game. And it's very difficult, especially whenever you're playing blue, for the opponent to kill all those units, because those units are relatively high health. So it's really easy to get this on. So obviously 25 HP base is a significant cost, so you need to have a real way to really get a huge advantage from the force. But now at least we have a base available in blue that allows you to get the force very easily. So this is obviously, blue is more of a control strategy, and usually control is really the deck. Obviously, generally speaking, even though every type of deck likes to have a lot of HP, generally speaking, control and mid-range deck prefer to have a lot of HP, while the aggressive deck don't mind having a less HP. So you see the people who run 25 HP base nowadays are gonna be your Quinlan deck, or gonna be your how's it called? Your Sabine deck playing ECL. So the more aggressive you play, the less you care about having less HP basically. And that's the problem of this base, is like it's more like kind of a control focused base, because obviously it's playing blue. You need, usually when you play a deck with units who have a lot of HP, usually they're pretty defensive units that are not really the kind of unit that are gonna allow you to so you're playing like a more defensive strategy. So this is the reason why I give this a maybe. I think the condition here to get the force is fairly straightforward. and very easy to do. The problem is running a 25 HP base in a more defensive deck is just so difficult. So I don't know if it's going to be worth it for this to do that. We're going to have to see the rest of the other false cards. Then we got Mystic Monastery, and this one I'm a lot more excited about. And the reason is because, obviously, this one, I mean, once again, this one gives you the Force, but really for free. I mean, all you have to do is spend an action to get the Force. I mean, spending an action is a cost, but the fact that you can do it without any requirement, any conditions, and up to 3 times each game is pretty massive. 3 times is a lot, especially if you're playing a very aggressive strategy and you're planning for the game to be short. That means that for every time you're going to need it, you're going to have the Force, which I think is very, very powerful. It still remains to be seen how much of a cost it is to have to spend an action taking the Force, but I think that overall, this is just an excellent, for me, it's the best way to get the Force in the entire game. And once again, it's a 25 HP base, so most likely something you want to do in an aggressive deck. So I think if you're running an aggressive deck that plays green and that wants to have the Force, Mystic Monastery is going to be a really, really good option. So I'm going to give this a thumbs up. I believe that if there is an aggressive Force archetype that's going to emerge, I think it's going to be playing Mystic Monastery, because once again, running a 25 HP base, not that big of a deal. And not only that, you also get yourself Force unconditionally and every time you need it. And once again, it's unlikely that you're going to need, especially in an aggressive deck, it's unlikely that you're going to need it more than 3 times a game. So in my opinion, it's a very good, it's the best base that provides the Force that we've seen so far. Next we got Temple of Destruction, which is another base you could be playing in an aggressive deck. This time, you have to have a friendly unit deal 3 or more damage to an enemy base to get the Force. This one I'm a lot less excited about, because it's very similar to the other one where you have to attack with a Force unit. Now to get the Force, this one does not have the Force requirement, any unit, but you have to deal at least 3 damage with the unit. In my opinion, I would, if I was going to be running an aggressive deck that needs the Force in red, I would just much rather play the 28 HP base. Once again, 3 more HP in the base is a much more beneficial, and here the condition is almost the same, is almost kind of like similar. So once again, it's the kind of condition that if the game goes wrong and your things get killed, it's gonna put you in a bad position. So in my opinion, I'd rather be running the red version of this 20 HP base in an aggressive deck, and I'm not very confident that this is going to see play. I think that also the competition with Tarkin Town is also a very big problem with this card, so I'm not as confident that it's going to see play. Then we have Temple of Elio Ram, and this one requires you to exhaust a friendly unit in order to get the Force. This is a really big cost because you need to have a unit that is unexhausted, first of all. So you almost need to have a dedicated unit in order to get that. This is a huge cost to have. So in my opinion, once again, running a 25 HP base, and it's not an easy condition to fulfill. So in my opinion, I don't think it's going to be good. So now, of course, we have the 2 remaining 20 HP base. We have the exact same ability that the one that we've seen so far, and they have, which is basically attack with a Force unit. I don't think those bases are going to be so good and constructed. I think that having to attack with a Force unit is a very big requirement. And once again, you're starting with 2 less HP compared to the other bases in the game, which is very significant. So I'm going to stay consistent with what I said with the 2 previous bases. I don't think they're going to be really good. As I said, I think that if you really want to use the Force, you have to use it in a deck that is really I think the best fit that I've seen right now is to play like a very aggressive deck. And it's, so my opinion, that I think there's going to be 2 things that are going to happen. It's either you play a control deck where you have a couple of things that requires a Force that are really big payoff for getting the Force, and then you're probably going to be, because you want the game to go long, you're likely to draw into the card that gives you the Force, and you're going to rely on those to get the Force instead of relying on your base. If you're running an aggressive deck, then it's a different story. You probably want to have the Force early, and you want to have it whenever you want. Like, you don't want to be waiting to get the Force, because you're gonna want to play on curve and have your things on Force. And in this case, you're probably gonna be running those 25 HP base, notably the Mystic Monastery, in order to get it. But obviously, those bases really make it a lot easier to get the Force, and now we're gonna be able to evaluate every other card in the game considering this, because so far I was kind of evaluating the Force unit, assuming the only way to get the Force was those 20 HP base and maybe a couple of cards. This time we know that there's actually those 25 HP base, which are going to make it a lot easier to get the Force, and obviously that's going to influence my evaluation, and that's why I started off by showing off those bases. And our next card is Karis. So Karis is a 2/4 for 2, and it has this very interesting one defeat effect that gives -2/-2 whenever you use the Force. So this card looks really, really good on paper, but I think it's not as good as it looks for multiple reasons. So first of all, let's talk about the positive. We get 6 stats for a 2 resource card, which is obviously very good. It's comparable to Battlefield Marine, gets 6 stats for 2. And it has a relevant trait, Force, and also Knight, which I think is a relevant trait as well. And on top of this, you get the one defeat effect, which at this point is just a bonus, right? Here's the problem. First of all, 2 Force Sightline is not as good as we thought it was. We saw this with the new R2D2 from set 3. This card has the 2 Force Sightline for 2, and it has an ability that is not super relevant, but it is kind of relevant. Karis is kind of in a similar situation. The problem is, first of all, you need to use the Force to get this, and then you cannot double this with Thrawn. So usually when defeated effect, of course, you're always thinking about Thrawn whenever you want to make those work. And the reason is, and because you have to use the Force, then you cannot really double it because you have to use the Force. Then the new trigger happens, and you have to use the Force again in order to get the -2/-2 twice. So basically, you can't get really the -2/-2 twice with Thrawn. Using the Force is a very big cost. And then the 2/4 stat line is kind of bad because it's not enough to really kill the Battlefield Marine. It's not good enough to kill the R2D. The Sabine, all the 3 health units that Agodek are going to be throwing at you. And at the same time, it still dies to ping plus Tarkitan. It's not even that resilient of a stat line. I mean, granted, if your opponent does ping plus Tarkitan to your true drop, it's not the end of the world. I mean, when it happens on turn 1, it can put you very behind on tempo. So yeah, and the force threat is really big, of course, but the thing is, we're now in a meta where the force threat is not as important as it used to be, simply because there now is a lot more competition. There are now basically there's loads of different options you can have for having force units. So in the past, you had very big payoff for force with the fourth throw notably, and you had very few force enablers. So the competition for different force unit was very fierce. But now, you had to kind of play the force unit that were out there because there are no other options. But in this case, the competition is a lot more fierce. You have to really think about what is the best force cards. There's going to be force units all over the place. So I don't think you need to that means that being force on its own is not really that enough of an argument anymore. So it's a card that looks really good on paper, but I honestly don't think it's going to be that good. The stat line is not enough anymore to really make those kind of card work, and the fact that it requires the false, and the fact that it doesn't synergize well with Thrawn, all those things here makes it, I don't see who would want to play this card basically. Next we got Ataru Onslaught. So this is one of those conditional ready effects. I think that the best ready effect that we have access to is Bravado, and I don't see any unexhausted effect. Ready effect are usually kind of finishers. You play them to kind of like ready a unit and then attack to finish the game off. They are situational because you need to be in the right disposition to have them. You need to have 1 large units, and obviously that means that the limitation here of having to be 4 power 4 or less is a very big limitation. And once again, you are taking a very situational effect, which is a ready effect, and you adding more condition on top of it, which is force and 4 less power. And all you get for this is just a 1 cost discount, which is not really that big of a deal for that kind of card. For that kind of card, it's a little bit like I would rather. It's a bit similar to buff like Surprise Strike, where I would rather have it being a little bit more expensive and not have any limitations, rather than paying less and having all those limitations on it. So this card is very difficult to use, and whenever it is used, it's not really that impactful because you can only do it on unit with 4 or less power. So Bravado is just the best ready effect we have access to, and it is much better than this card. Then we got Talzin Assassin. I don't like this card at all. The stat line is pretty bad, 4/4/4/4. The when defeated effect once again requires you to use the false, so I'm gonna make the same complaint as I did for Karis, where you can't double it with Thrawn. And it is a when play effect though, so it's actually not even a when defeat effect. So yeah, it's not yeah, having to use the force is a very big cost, and the effect is quite situational. There's a situation where there's simply no -3 -3 and you get like very poorly stat line units. I don't think it's good enough. I could be wrong about this one because the when play effect, I completely overlooked that. But yeah, no, I don't think it's amazing. Next we got Doom. And Doom is this new double blue card, 2/7. I really like that kind of card. It's a kind of card that is not very good in most decks, but it's in the right deck, it's really amazing. What it gives also is very unique because it gives you like an effect that triggers every turn, and it gives an experience token to each other friendly unit, non-vehicle unit. So the idea, of course, is to play some sort of like swarm blue deck with a lot of high health units, which is very possible to do. It's just that those type of decks are not really being very competitive right now. But those decks, if you're playing a Ray deck, keeping your unit alive is not that difficult because you're giving them experience token, and they also have naturally a lot of health. So they basically make them super beefy. You make those R2s, the 2/5s that are very difficult to take down. And basically, and then at some point you drop Doom, and Doom is also extremely difficult to take down. Those 7 health units comes down on 4, and then from that point, every turn gonna give experience to units every single turn, which I think is very impactful. So it's a slow card, a 4 card cost card that doesn't have immediate impact and does require a board, but I think a kind of card like this can snowball pretty hard. So I am hoping that this is going to be good more than I'm like confident it's going to be good. I'm going to give it a thumbs up because it's very unique. I think it can potentially enable a new type of decks. It can be a huge buff to those kind of Ray double blue deck. It's going to be very specialized. It also has the force trait, which is nice. And it's also a creature, which it matters for a couple of, if you want to play like a Kanan double blue deck, I think the Doom could be a really good option as well. So there's a lot of cool things going on with this card, and this is why I give the thumbs up. Next we got a new leader, is Mother Talzin. So she's interesting. So a lot of people have been comparing her to Quinlan because she has a 3/7 stat line for 5, and she also has this ability that she can use to give -1/-1 unit for free, similarly to Quinlan. It's just that here the condition is a bit different. In this case, you have to use the force, while against Quinlan, you have to drop a unit that has the same cost as a unit already in play that you want to ping. So what can we say about this card? First of all, I want to put this out of the way. This is a lot worse than Quinlan. It's a lot worse than Quinlan for multiple reasons. First of all, using the force is a much more thicker condition. Even if you're playing the green base, it's a much thicker condition than putting a unit that has the cost of an enemy unit. It's another thing is like if you're playing the base that gives you the force, you don't have access to Tarkin Town. And the real reason why Quinlan is good is because of its combination of Tarkin Town. If you remove the synergy with Tarkin Town, then Quinlan is not nearly as good anymore. Like we see a couple of Quinlan green and Quinlan blue coming around, but 99% of the Quinlan red that have done results in tournaments are basically just Quinlan red, and this is really the combination with Tarkin Town that makes it so strong. In this case, you don't have that. But you still have to run a 25 HP base because you need to have the force to enable this ability. So this is just, so in my opinion, if it's ever going to see play, it's going to see play with the green base, the monastery, in order to get the force whenever you want, so you can use the ability whenever you want. But yeah, it's worse. And then the on attack ability is quite strong, and because she's quite difficult to get rid of. So she's not bad, but she's definitely not on the same level as Quinlan. But Quinlan is currently one of the best leaders in the game, so maybe it's a bit unfair to say that she's not going to see play just because she is just worse than the best leader in the game. She might still, obviously she's in completely different color combinations, so that gives her maybe so she can make up for the weaker leader can be made up by maybe some really strong supports, or simply just a stronger set of cards, which is not guaranteed at all, but it's definitely something that is possible. So in my opinion, I'll give this one a maybe. It's a generous maybe. I'm not super confident she's going to see play, but I'm giving the benefit of the doubt just because she's fairly close in power level to Quinlan, and that by itself is enough to make her potentially playable. Next we got Sores's Stance. And this card is not very good at all. We have Moment of Peace, which is an unconditional give a shield for 1 that doesn't see any play. This card allows you to save an action. You can play this and saving an action, which is very nice. But the fact that it can only be played on Force unit is a huge blocker, especially since most of the Force unit we've seen so far don't have Sentinels. Usually you want to give a shield token to a Sentinels. So yeah, I'm not confident this is going to see play. It seems to be way too specialized. And it just is a more conditional version of a Moment of Peace, which already doesn't see any play. Moving on, we got the Night Sister Warrior, and I'm a lot more confident about this card than I was on the previous one, even though our stats are lower, because the when defeated effect here doesn't require you to use the Force. That means that you are guaranteed to draw a card when this goes down, and that means you can double it with Thrawn. And I think this is really something that Thrawn has been missing. This kind of early game card draw, like there's a 2/4 in space that draws you a card when it dies, but the problem is like 2/4 for 3 doesn't really die. Like those cards, the 2/4 in space, nobody wanted to attack it. It's called the Lambda Shuttle. Nobody really wanted to attack it, so if you had to sacrifice it, you have to sacrifice it yourself most of the time. And because it was a 3-drop, it was kind of painful to do that. Now we have a card that is much more likely to die by herself. It also has the Force trait, which is relevant. And now she's much more likely to die by herself and then draw you 2 cards. And then suddenly we're talking about a card that draws you 2 cards and also gives you a 2/2 body to work with. So I think this card is really, really nice in a Thrawn deck. Is that going to be enough for Thrawn to be competitive? I don't think so. At least it's not going to be enough on its own. But if there's a new Thrawn deck that comes out, I think she's likely to make the cut in this. So I give this a thumbs up. Then we got Old Daka. So Old Daka, first of all, she's a 6/6 for 5, so that by itself is pretty big. I think she's the first 6/6 for 5 available to Villainy, which is kind of a big deal, but we know 6/6 for 5 by itself is not really enough for a card to see play. Most of the units, they need an extra something for this to be good. We saw, like, for example, with Anakin. I mean, Anakin is suffering from the comparison with Poe Dameron. Poe Dameron is really good, strong because of all of his super relevant ability. 6/6 for 5 is not enough by itself. But she does have an ability, and that ability can be really powerful. So you may defeat a friendly nice unit not named Old Daka, and then you may play that unit for from your discard pile for free. So this allows you to re-trigger either a when play effect or a when defeated effect. Right now, all the when play, when defeated effect are unfortunately requires you to use the Force, which is very annoying. Excepted Night Sister Warrior, so I think on the Night Sister combined with Night Sister Warrior, I think she's quite good. Unfortunately, that's the only card that currently is in that has that. So in my opinion, I would want to run this card in potentially kind of in a how's it called? I don't think the 6/6 for 5 stat line is enough on its own. I would want to run this card in a deck that actually utilize the ability. And right now, we haven't seen enough Knight we'll see how many Knights actually come out. If they release, in my opinion, 1 or 2 more Knights that have a very, very strong when play or when defeated effect that really synergizes very well with Old Daka, that doesn't require you to use the Force, I think we have something. Old Daka is likely to see play. So I'm going to give this one a maybe for now. Moving on to East Coast, and East Coast, so I was really looking, so now we have much easier time to get the Force. I'm now looking for cards that actually gives you some significant bonus for having the Force, and East Coast is definitely one of them. 5/4 stat line for 4 is already not bad, and then the when defeated effect, which is likely to happen on a 4 health unit, those units have a tendency to die relatively quickly. You get yourself an extra resource. You have to use the Force for it to do that though. And also has a lot of relevant trait, False Jedi Republic. So I like this. I give this one a maybe. Okay, so maybe ignore my comment. I think this one, like, okay, I'm gonna take the risk. I'm gonna give this one a thumbs up. So ignore what's on the meme. I give this one a thumbs up, and the reason why I'm giving this one a thumbs up is because I think that once again, if there's a deck that's gonna be using the Force in green, it's likely to be running this card. And remember the 1/4 card that gives you that basically kind of a displacer, but you need to use the Force to use it, but give a 2 resource discount. This is amazing. Like this card really becomes amazing now in a green Force deck. They can actually ramp pretty hard. It has to run the 25 GB base, but once again, you use the Force for the 3 first turn of the game when you need to ramp, and then after this, you can be in a really good position. So I think this card is really strong in that context, and so I'm gonna give this a thumbs up. There's a chance, of course, it doesn't see play. It requires a very specific deck for this to work, but I think that I'm confident enough that this deck can see play that I'm ready to give the thumbs up. Moving on, we got Acolyte of the Beyond, which is another way to really easily get the Force. All you have to do is attack or when defeated, but obviously the stat line is really bad. So where would you want to play this card? Well, you want to play this card in a deck that really want to have the Force. So maybe you want to run the I forgot the name, the Night Sister, what's she called? Yeah, the Mother Talzin red deck. You can actually, it's another way you can get the Force, and maybe this, if you have like enough unit like this that gives you the Force with a very easy condition, maybe you get enough of them that you don't need to run a base that requires you to get the Force. Maybe that's a possibility. I don't know. Anyway, I give this one a maybe, but it is one of the unit that gives you the Force the easiest. It has really bad stats, but I think the payoff here is big enough for a deck that cares about it that I think it's worth considering. Next, we got Ogdo Bogdo, and Ogdo Bogdo is our 5/5 for 3 that cannot attack unless it's damaged. And when unit attack and defeat a unit, it heals up 2 damage from this unit. So what can we say about this? We can say that this card is really amazing in 2 specific decks. There's 2 decks that really love this card. The first one is obviously Hantu Blue. Hantu Blue love this card because obviously using Hantu's ability, you can actually play this card already damaged, and you can give it a discount, which means that you can play this card as a 5/3 for 2 resource on turn 1. You think that Battlefield Marine is strong on 3/3 for 2? Well, think again with Ogdo Bogdo coming down as a 5/3 for 2. This is just such an oppressive stat line. It's not that unless you got a Tarkin Town, it's not that difficult to kill. So it's not that easy to kill unless you have Tarkin Town. And if you don't kill it, it's gonna slap you really hard. And if you have the bad idea to put like it's just such an aggressive turn 1 play that I think is so incredibly powerful. Obviously it does have the downside of dying to Tarkin Town, but I think if you're running onto ECL, kind of everything does, so you kind of like, okay, might as well just have this Tarkin Town out of the way, forcing the use of Tarkin Town early in the game, and then just take the game from there, rather than just it's kind of like it doesn't really make that big of a difference from Hantu, because Hantu is already getting blown up by Tarkin Town anyways. So you're just gonna say, okay, well, we're gonna get this out of the way, and now and in any other matchups, then you get basically a 5/3 for 2 on turn 1, which is super insane. And there's the other deck that really love this card is Kazuda Blue. So Kazuda Blue is a deck that already sees a little bit of play, notably because it has this 3/5 in space that cannot attack, and you can basically use Kazuda to kind of be able to attack with it. So that's a 3/5 for 2 in space is really strong. And now this deck can run this 5/5 for 3 with no downside into on turn 2, which is so powerful. Obviously Kazuda likes to play vehicles because he likes to deploy the pilot on it, but it's a deck that you can deploy your leaders on the ground. It's not that big of a deal if you get Kazuda is one of those leaders that you can deploy in space onto a space unit, and that's nice. But actually deploying the leaders on the ground, it's completely acceptable as well. So if you go like, you don't really need to play vehicle on turn 2. It's better if you do, but you don't have to, especially if you open up turn 1 with a vehicle and a vehicle doesn't get dealt with, and you have another vehicle to deploy into. Or you can even play Falcon and then deploy on the Falcons and still get to play your leader deploy. In any case, this card is amazing in Kazuda Blue because, yeah, it's a 5/5 for 3 with no downside. And the cool thing is, like, you can give it a downside whenever you want. So whenever it's not damaged and you disable its ability so it's able to attack. And whenever it gets damaged, well, by any way, you can simply just not use Kazuda and then attack a unit and then heal it up. Which is just really insane. So, yeah, but most likely it's going to be 5/5 for 3, which is more than enough. Really a great card. It's also something I also wanted to mention is like, it is a creature. So if you are playing Hantu Blue and you're going Ogdo Bogdo turn 1, and then you can go Ezra, the new Ezra that gives +1/+1 experience to creatures. You can actually start stacking up the counters on the Ogdo Bogdo and make it even bigger. So it's really is an amazing card. Once again, it's not playable in every deck, but in the 2 decks in which it's going to see play, it's going to be amazing. And that's why I'm going to give this an amazing rating, because I truly believe that this is going to change. I think Kazuda Blue is going to be a competitive deck thanks to this card. This might be the card that turns a deck from kind of competitive but not great into like a really great deck. And same can be said about Hantu Blue. I think Hantu Blue is really going to get such a massive buff with this card. There might be other places that I've overlooked where this could see play, but for now those are the 2 ones that jump into my mind, and those 2 are enough for me to give this an amazing rating. Even though it is not playable in every card deck, I think it has a strong impact on the meta. Then we got Youngling Padawan, which is very similar to the Sith dude that we saw earlier. It's kind of a guarantee, gives you the Force, which is very nice. But once again, trade off with a very bad stat line. 2/3 for 2 is just simply it's never been great in Star Wars Limited, and it still isn't. At least until maybe until Battlefield Marine rotates out of the game. Maybe when Battlefield Marine and Sabine rotates out, maybe the 2/3 for 2 is going to become kind of a much better stat line. But as of now, it's not going to be the case. So this one, I'm going to give it the same rating as I did for the previous units. It's going to be a maybe. If you need a deck that really desperately needs the Force, at least this gives you the guarantee Force. It's also a Force unit itself, which is very nice. So yeah, that's what we are looking at. Next we got the Strike Ship, and the Strike Ship is basically kind of the villainy version of the A-Wing, the Green Squadron A-Wing. So obviously it's a little bit worse. I would probably be rather 1/3 with Raid 2, even though I don't have the Overwhelm, than having the Overwhelm. But it is close enough, in my opinion, that it needs to be taken a look. Also, it has relevant traits like Underworld, which we know is very relevant. Is very relevant, of course, with our friend what's it called, Cad Bane. So yeah, relevant traits. Basically, potentially a 3/3 for 2 in space, and the Overwhelm. Even though this one is a little bit more situational, I think this is a good card. I think it's a good card. So obviously it's very awkward, always a bit like the A-Wing. If you face another unit that have 3 health, it kind of gets hard countered. But I think that depending on the meta, I think this is going to see a lot more play. So yeah, I think the fact that we are comparing this card is extremely close in power level to Green Squadron A-Wing is enough for me to give this card a thumbs up. And this is really also something that I think the Red-Black really needed better 3-drops in space. Like we have the Kyle Silencer, but it's really a good addition, I think, to the villainy red arsenal. Next we got Luminous Being. So this card is kind of Unity of Purpose, but much more difficult to get work, because you need to have 3 Force units in your discard pile, which is not something that is easy to do. At least you can't do this very consistently. And then you can give up 3 unit +4/+4. So it's kind of Unity of Purpose is already very situational, because you need to have a lot of units in play, and you need to be playing double green. But here it feels like it's even more situational, and obviously it doesn't scale like Unity of Purpose. What makes Unity of Purpose so strong is the combination with the Rex deployment with the Droid Manufactory, which allows you to put 1,000,000 units into play. And then every unit you play after that just scales up, and you give usually way more than +4/+4 to each of those units. So it's a card that scales much better. So Luminous Being simply does not have the ceiling that a Unity of Purpose has, and it's so much more situational, because having 3 Force units in the discard pile is very difficult to do, at least for now. So like, once again, I'm gonna judge this in a vacuum. Maybe there's some crazy combo that can exist that would make this work, but I think this card is really overcosted, and the condition of having 3 Force units to put at the bottom of the discard pile is way too situational. So I don't think it's a good card. Moving on now to Kilaren Beck. Kilaren Beck is a really interesting unit. So it has this really huge Vader vibe, where it comes out and then search for a unit that costs 3 or less and put him into play. It has a couple of things that it does worse than Vader, a couple of things that it does better than Vader. So we're gonna kind of like look into it. First of all, stat line. She's a 7/7 instead of a 5/7. That's a huge deal. That means that this card can one-shot a Vader, can one-shot any unit at 7 health, and then there's a lot of them, including the leaders. They can just one-shot most of the leaders in the game. Obviously, it doesn't have ambush, which is a big deal. That means it can't really have an immediate impact on the game. And the searching is also a little bit worse. You only search top 7 instead of top 10. And but however, it doesn't have the limitation of just villainy units. And it can also, if you have more than 7 resource, you can actually drop a card that costs more than 3. And give a 3 resource discount. So if you pay this on 8, you can potentially put a 4 drop into play. So obviously it's available in a different aspect. My opinion is I think it's worse than Vader. I think Vader Ambush is so incredibly relevant, especially in this meta where there's so many 3/5, so many 5 health units you want to kill. I still think Vader is a better card, but Caroline Beck is not far behind. It's not far behind. It's definitely has its quality, and because it's available in a completely different set of colors, I think it's likely to see play, and it's a great card to pick up of U-Wing Reinforcement. Some people are thinking, well, this is basically kills, it's better than U-Wing Reinforcement. I don't think it's better than U-Wing Reinforcement. I think it's you played on top of U-Wing Reinforcement. You play U-Wing Reinforcement, and then you grab this one, and then you can just produce so much value. So I'm going to give this a thumbs up. I think it's a really good card. Then we got Depa Bilaba. So she's basically Vader, 5/7, but for 1 less resource. But she has Saboteur, and she obviously doesn't grab your unit. I like this card quite a bit. I think that if you're looking for a card that costs 6 and ambush, I think she's much better than the old Enfysness. Remember the 6/4? I think she's so much better than this. Because in the current meta, there's not that big of a difference between 5 attack and 6. I think it's the big break point is more on the 5, in my opinion. And then you get Saboteur as well, so you get to get rid of the shield, and obviously you don't need and then the 7 health is very relevant as well, and she's also Force, Jedi, Republic, which are 3 relevant traits. So I think she's pretty good, and I'll give her a thumbs up. Obviously, the old Enfysness can be played for both villainy and heroism, so the old Enfysness might still see a little bit of play, but I think this card is also likely to see play as well. I think she's quite good in Quinlan as well. I think like it's a card that we also could potentially see in Quinlan potentially. It's not, once again, the kind of card that you're going to be slam dunking in any deck that runs Cunning and Heroism. It's the kind of card that is going to be very meta dependent. It's going to be kind of like a new option for you to consider whenever you're running that type of deck. The fact that it has Saboteur, all that thing needs to matter for this to be included into your deck. Next was the new Maze Kanata, and she's nice. She's very nice. She has an immediate impact on the game. She gonna have this Fleet Lieutenant's effect, attack with a unit with a certain trait and get +2 attack with it, which we know is very powerful. So it does. She does care about the 4th trait instead of caring about the Rebel trait. Rebel, of course, is way more widespread than the Force trait as it stands, but this may change with this new expansion. So if you're running a Force-focused deck, this card is amazing, because she doesn't give you a 3/3, she gives you a 3/4. And she's available in both Villainy and Heroism if you're running a Force-focused aggressive deck, or even if it's not necessarily an aggressive deck, even a mid-range deck, you are going to be wanting to run Maze Kanata. It just immediate impact on the game, gives you a very decent body behind this. Really a good card. I give this a thumbs up. It's really, really a good card. Next, we got Kylo Ren. The new Kylo Ren here, I don't think is very good. We know the 2/3/2 stat line is terrible. It needs to basically be upgraded to do something. So a card that needs another card to actually be good is kind of usually kind of bad. To get the overwhelm. He draws you a card when you put an upgrade unit, but then you have to use the Force, which is really, really awkward. This card is not good. I don't understand that people find this card good. Being a Force 2-drop is not enough on its own. There's so many good 2-drop Force right now that this doesn't matter anymore. And the having to use the Force to get to draw a card is really a joke in my opinion. And the stat line is terrible. And he needs other cards for this to work. It's not a good card. Then we had Pong Krell. So the card is very interesting. It has those massive stats that are very interesting. Obviously, in order for this to be good, you need to be able to damage it. So obviously the best way to use it is in a Kira deck, where you get to damage it, give it a shield, and then give it a grid, and suddenly becomes a 4/7, which is such a better stat line. And then you can actually attack, and then you can actually attack, and the idea is to either attack a unit and do a double kill. You can also, of course, attack a unit and then kill that unit afterwards. So it will basically kill any units. It's a really, really good fighter, basically. What I don't like about the card is like it's a 7-drop with no immediate impact on the game. And that obviously is, in my opinion, very difficult to justify in a constructed deck. I think that the way constructed works is that when you are if you cost 5 or more resource, you need to have some sort of immediate impact on the game for this to work. And if you're playing against an opponent that doesn't even have any land units, then Punkra, which is a fighter that really wants to engage in combat against other units, makes this pretty much unplayable. So I don't think it's a good card for constructed. At least it's going to be good in draft, but it just is too difficult to make work. It's basically just too slow, and whenever it actually works, it still is really slow and very conditional. So I don't think it's a good card. Next, we got the Witch of the Mist, and the Witch of the Mist is a kind of an hidden force. And I think it's kind of like a draft enabler that is supposed to be using with the 20 HSP base to get the force. And I think she does that role pretty well, but obviously not good in constructed. There's just much better things to do than playing a 1-drop that has literally no impact on the game than just giving you the force if you're running those pretty bad 20 HP base. Then we got Shirut Inway. So Shirut Inway is this new 3/5 for 4, 3/5 Sentinels for 4, and this card is pretty good. It's pretty good because it's basically a strictly better version of the ATRT. So ATRT is a vehicle, which may be an upside in certain decks, but this one has the Force trait, which is also very relevant depending on what deck you're playing. So this one, whenever you attack, you use the Force, and if you do, you give -2 attack to the attacker gets -2 attack. So whenever this unit is being attacked. So I think the ability is not very relevant, but the fact that he has access to that ability, and the fact that the Force trait means that every time you play like a 4th row deck that is basically looking for 3/5 for 4, is going to prefer to play Shirut Inway over the ATRT. I think it's the ATRT thing. Also, the fact that this fringe is also quite relevant because you can run the wing guards that basically give shielded to 2 fringe units. So you can play this on turn 3, and you can play the wing guard after, and then you would give basically a shield to both units, and giving shield to Sentinels is always great. So there's this kind of little interaction which I think is really good, and it's a 3/5 Sentinel for 4, which I think is a good stat line. So I think it's a thumbs up. It's not obviously an amazing upgrade over the ATRT, but it's if you care about the Force trade, then it definitely is a pretty significant upgrade. Then we got the Paladin Training Corvette. This card is just really, really overpriced. Stat lines are awful even for space units. And you need to have 3 Force units in play to really take full advantage of the ability, which is very difficult to do. So yeah, the 1 play ability is not that impactful, the stat line is awful, and it's overpriced, so no, I don't think it's a good card. Then we got the Thrall of the Coven. This card is kind of interesting. It's a 3/7, also 6/7 when you attack, so really good stat line, but it is a 5-drop with no immediate impact on the game. And no relevant keyword. I think the 90, I don't think that's relevant trait in this case, because it has no when defeated ability, so it cannot be really used with all DACA. So yeah, I don't think it's good enough. I think it's mostly kind of a draft card. It's a lot of stats, but I don't think that's enough really for this to see play. It's a 5-drop with no immediate impact on the game, so that's the problem. Then we got Sith Holocron. So I was actually looking through the card pool to see what card really benefits from this, and right now, unfortunately, there is none. Basically, you want to play this card on a Force unit that has Grit. because then you deal your own damage to your unit, you get a +2 attack. I think the idea of this card is you take your opponent by surprise. Your opponent basically taps out for some reason, and then for 1 resource you can play this on a unit that has grit, and then you can deal 2 damage to it and again +2 attack, and you can completely blown in out of the water this way. So we have sorry, forgot the name, yeah, Pong, in which it's combined very, very well, but Pong is just too expensive of a card for this to really be reliably good. Right now, the best use for this card is to use it on Fifth Brother, because obviously Fifth Brother will really love this card. So that's really currently the problem with this card. Like, it only truly works with Fifth Brother, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing really else that really where this really works. So I'm just gonna give this a maybe, because I'm hoping that there's gonna be more card, because I think once again you're running into this card into a deck that has a lot of force unit with grit or some sort of benefit from getting a lot of damage on them, and I think Sith Holocron can really become nasty. As such a cheap card, I can just deal you like 1,000,000 damage out of nowhere, because let's say you play this like on a Fifth Brother. This unit basically gets raid 1 for every damage on it, so you get yourself a 2/4. You play this, deal 2 damage to the Fifth Brother. Fifth Brother becomes a 3/3. 3/3 rage 2, so that's 5, 6, 7 damage out of nowhere for only 1 resource, which I think is very nice. But once again, we need to see more card that synergize with it for this to be any good. Then we got the Infused Brawler. This is definitely a very aggressive card. Basically requires you to use the force when played, which is something you can do, because now we have basically unconditional ways to get the force. If you're playing the green aggro deck, you can basically get yourself the force token and then play this on turn 1 as a 4/4 for 2, which is very, very powerful. And it also has a force trait, which is very nice as well. So basically, I think the idea of this is meant to be a super aggressive all-in. So the card becomes weaker and weaker as you complete more attack. But to be fair, I don't think, even if you get like 2 attacks out of this dude, 7 damage, that's already just more than enough for this to pay by itself. And at that point, if your opponent deals with it, it's okay. Because it kind of already done this job. So I think this is really strong in a sort of aggressive deck that uses the force. Whether this deck is going to exist or not remains to be seen. But I'm ready to give this a maybe. Obviously, it's going to depend on whether this aggressive kind of force deck do exist. But in theory, this card looks really, really strong. Next, we got J-type Nubian Starship. So I don't like this card. It's basically, the stats are weak. The when playability is nice-ish, but then you have to discard a card when it gets defeated, so it kind of cancels it out. Obviously, this is meant to be played in a Qui-Gon Jinn deck, but as you already know, I have zero faith that this deck is going to be good. So to me, it is not a good card. Then we got a Qui-Gon Jinn Lightsaber. So Qui-Gon Jinn Lightsaber, right now the only lightsaber that sees play basically is the Luke Skywalker lightsaber. I'm talking about those specific lightsaber that do something specific when they are played on a specific character. The Luke is really the only lightsaber that sees play, and even then that's very niche because it only works in Luke deck, which currently don't see that much play. Right now we have 2 Qui-Gon Jinn. We have the leader, which we know is bad, and we have the unit, which is very good, but it's a unit that kind of like attacks and already does its thing. It's quite an expensive one as well. So yeah, the bonus whenever you get to equip it on Qui-Gon Jinn is quite situational. You need to have like enough units that cost $6 that you actually want to exhaust. And so yeah, I don't think this. I think this card is way too niche, and the effect and the payoff whenever you actually do play on the right unit is not that big. We might need to reconsider this card if we see cheap Qui-Gon Jinns being introduced. But right now, with the current Qui-Gons we have, I don't see this being played. Then we got Impossible Escape. So basically, this card is kind of you pay 1, you exhaust a friendly unit, or use the 4th, and then you exhaust a minion unit and draw a card. I don't think it is worth it to use this to spend the force for such a mediocre effect, for such a situational effect. Even if that means drawing a card, and having to exhaust your own friendly unit is such a massive cost. We have a card that does this already for 0 and sees no play. This one costs 1. So whether you want to use it with the Force or without the Force, I don't think it's really good. And I don't think the drawing the card is really making up for that. So I don't really like this card. Then we have the Wheel of the Force. And this one is basically a waylay effect that can also discard a card at random if you are using the Force, which I think can be quite nice. If you have the deck that really consistently get the Force, it's kind of nice, but you also have to spend an extra resource to make this work. It's not waylay costs 3, this one costs 4. The good thing is that you can, if your opponent only happens to, in Magic, those kind of effects can be very strong. When your opponent has no card in hand, you can bounce the unit and then you can just discard the unit that got drawn, which is pretty much the ideal scenario for this card. The problem is that in Star Wars Limited, you really rarely have an empty hand because you draw 2 cards per turn. It's very difficult to have a completely empty hand. And not only that, removing, basically having a card that defeats a non-leader unit for 4 while you spending the Force is not that great, because in the game we currently have cards that cost 4 that will kill a unit without having to spend the Force, and those cards are card like Fel the Dragon. I mean, Fel the Dragon has a limitation, but most of the time units that you want to spend 4 resource killing are usually large ones. So yeah, I think that even if you use the Force on it, I don't think the card is spectacular enough for this to be really worth playing. And I would rather have a discounted waylay at 3, which I think the reason why waylay is good is because it costs 3, guys. It's because you can play it on turn 2 to bounce a unit that has a vehicle on it, that has a pilot on it. Yeah, the fact that it costs 3 is a huge portion of what makes waylays very powerful. So having to spend an extra and having to spend a Force to get the random discard, I don't think is worth it. So I'm gonna give this a not playable. I could be wrong about this one, but this is what this is how I stand for now, at least on my first impression. Then we get Directed by the Force. This card is basically gives you the Force if you pay 1 resource, and it doesn't cost you an action to do that, which is kind of neat. Yeah, it's one of these cards that kind of gives you the Force kind of unconditionally, which is kind of nice. So I like this. I don't think it's I can see a world where this could see play, and I'm gonna give this a maybe. It's really gonna come down to either a deck out there that wants to have the Force at a specific moment. If you're playing green though, you're likely to be playing the Monastery, in which case you kind of already has an unconditional way to get the Force, so maybe that's not gonna be needed just because of the color. But it's not necessarily because you play green that you have access to the Monastery. Sometimes your leader is the one that is green, even though that's quite unlikely because most green leaders are kind of trash, but that's a different topic. Village Standard is our first Ewok being introduced to the game, and it is kind of nice. Like it is, we're thinking of something similar than a Clone Deserter. Clone Deserter is a 2/3, restore 1, but make your opponent draw a card when it gets killed. This one doesn't have that downside, and it has the upside of being hidden as well, which means it cannot be attacked when it comes into play. So I think that in the kind of, if you're playing an aggressive deck like something like a Hantu ECL, I would probably prefer to play the Clone Deserter because it has an extra attack, which I think is very relevant for an aggressive deck. So I think if you're running a Hantu ECL, you would rather play the Clone Deserter, and you don't really care about your opponent drawing a card really most of the time. However, if you're playing the other array deck, like a Ray Green deck that is much more slower, much more based on kind of outvalue the opponent on it, not making your opponent draw a card is very relevant. And the fact that this one is hidden means that you can safely kind of putting an experience on it before it gets killed. That's very relevant. So you play this on turn 1 against Battlefield Marine, your opponent cannot attack the Village Tender before you get a chance to give an experience token to it, and once he has experience, it becomes a 2/4 for 2, restore 1, and it can be buffed further the turn after as a 3/5 restore 1, thanks to Ray's ability. So I think in a Ray deck, it is a strict upgrade over Clone Deserter, so I'm giving the thumbs up just for that. And it might see play in other decks, of course. Then we got the Kit Fisto Air to Sprite. 5/4/5 is kind of bad, kind of not a great stat line, but it has a very powerful one playability to defeat any number of upgrade on a unit. So it's kind of like also called well, there's already a card that does this for 2. So yeah, it's kind of like the big brother version of Disabling Fang Fighters. If you're playing a deck that is able to discount the Edge of Sprite, like for example you play Hantu ECL, that means you can play this on turn on turn 3 and defeat an upgrade and get yourself a 4/3 Saboteurs into play. The Saboteur here is kind of random, but there's a situation where that can be useful. I can see this being played in a hand 2 deck, or I can see this play in a hand deck. It's not guaranteed, of course, but it is possible to be played depending on the meta. It's really going to come down to the meta whether this card is good or not. It's really good at stripping down, like potentially, once again, if you're running hand 1 or hand 2 and you're able to strip down like a Talzin, something like this, I think it can be very powerful. So yeah, I'm going to give this a maybe. It's really going to be the meta dependent. I just want to let you know that you can pick up Home 1 for €7 on Card Market. This is a card that has seen a lot of resurgence in play. It sees play in a wide variety of different decks. Hand 1 green, it sees plays in red green, and it also sees plays in those new kind of red, green, white mid-range decks like Anakin green and hand 2 Data Vault and that kind of thing. So it's a card that really sees a lot of play right now, so want to pick it up. It's still the best late game card you can play in green white. It's been the case since the beginning of the game, and that's still true today. Next we got Miman Strike. So this is basically Dogfight that only works on force units but give them +1 attack. And it's very interesting because right now Dogfight is only really used in one deck, which is the good old Anakin deck, because this is the only deck that can consistently have a giant unit with Overwhelm in play, and yeah, this is the only deck that has access to that. And Neiman Strikes works like basically will do a better job in this specific deck because you get yourself a +1 attack bonus, which can be relevant. So in my opinion, I give this a maybe because we're not sure whether Anakin. It's really only good in Anakin green. I mean, some people are going to mention, no, he's good with Maul as well, but yeah, Maul is not really a great leader. So it's really come down to whether this deck is going to see play or not. But if it does, it's going to see play. It's going to be very niche, but it's going to see play because it's just better than Dogfight in that specific deck. Even though I would consider the Dogfight to be a better card in general, Nimian Strike is just better in that specific deck. And currently, the specific deck is the only play that plays Dogfight. So moving on, we got Adi Galia, which is our new 2/4 for 2. And this might be the first 2/4 for 2 in the game that will see consistent amount of play in the meta. I already talked about that I was not a big fan of the 2/4 stat line, but this one has a lot more other stuff going on. It is a False Jedi Republic, 3 relevant traits. It is red-white, and it is, of course, it has this when opponent plays an event, deal 1 damage to that player's base, which is a very powerful ability that will trigger some damage here and there, and because the unit is quite difficult to kill, you are likely to get this ability for a significant amount of time. So, once again, not a big fan of the 2/4 stat line, but this card is pretty good, and is obviously going to be great in decks that are able to make up for the lack of attack. So, for example, you're playing a Quinlan deck, you get to ping the opponent units as it comes out, meaning that you can still kill a Battlefield Marine with a 2 health, or if you're playing against... if you're playing this in an Anakin deck, Anakin can give it a +2 attack bonus for this to attack. Right now, R2 is already very good in Anakin. It's just that Anakin doesn't like to play yellow most of the time, but Anakin definitely will play red by default. So in this case, this card is really good in Anakin. General, any 4th throw deck would love that card as well, because 4th throw now get to deal an extra damage whenever you play 4th throw, and it unable 4th throw because it's force. So there's a lot of good things to like about this card. It's really a great card. I give this a thumbs up. It's not going to see play in every red-white deck, obviously, but it's going to see play in the deck that likes to play 4th and have some sort of ways to kind of make up for the lack of attack to deal with those pesky turn 1 play that Sabine is going to be throwing at you. And just right after, we have another 2/4 that comes into play, and this one is also very nice. She's called Yaddle, and she has, I think she's a she, I'm not sure about that, I'm pretty sure that is. And she has a lot of cool thing going on. She is Restore 1, which is very relevant. 2, 3, 4, 2, like Restore 1 is always something we've seen already. And she has this on attack that also friendly Jedi again Restore 1 for this phase. So the on attack is kind of super situational, but already 2/4 for 2, Restore 1 is pretty relevant. She's once again really good with Anakin. I don't think she's going to see as much play as Adigalia. I think Adigalia is overall a better card, but it's really, really a nice card to have. Once again, the Anakin's deck, if you're playing Anakin Blue, you can give +2 attack, and then suddenly makes up for our weakness to have a low attack value. Really, 2/4 starter is really good with Anakin. Yeah, so there's a lot of cool things going on with this card, and once again, gonna give the thumbs up. I don't think it's as good as Adigalia, but I think it is definitely gonna be definitely gonna see play as well. Then we have our new leader, Kit Fisto. So I've been actually quite impressed by a lot of the new cards that we've seen this week, but boy, the leaders, they are so incredibly weak. I give them maybe to the other card, which I think was a generous one. This one, I'm really, really confident to say that this is not going to see any play in competitive. It is basically a worst version of Ahsoka. Ahsoka, remember, she gets 5/6. She becomes 5/6 if you control 2 other units, any units. This one, to get it at 5/6, you would need to have 4 other Jedi specifically. So it's just horrible stat line. It does have Saboteur, but I don't think that's that big of a deal. But the condition here for this to be up to a decent size is just so incredibly difficult. The stat lines are just awful, and the ability is also not great. Like, you have to be attacked with a Jedi for this to use that ability. So Jedi is more restricted than Force. There's way more Force unit in the game than there's Jedis. So attack with a very specific, we already know that decks that require you to be specifically, that are limited to specific traits, are a lot weaker than the one that are not. And then you need to deal 2 damage to a unit, which would be great in a control or mid-range deck, but in the context of something that's supposed to be an aggro leader, it's really not that great. So yeah, the leader ability is really restricted, cost resource, and on top of this, doesn't really kind of flow into what this leader's trying to do, and then the leader deploy is absolutely awful. So this is really a bad one. And that's it. That is it for this reveal. So I'm sorry we're ending this up on a bad note, but overall I think that there's a lot of great cards in this new reveal, and I'm a lot more excited about this set than I was a couple of weeks ago. And the reason is because now we have a lot more interesting card that will spawn new decks, or at least will reinforce existing decks that are currently not really meta. And I always love that kind of things in games. And the other thing that I'm really excited about is, like, now I'm actually a lot more excited about the Force mechanic, because we have actual bases which actually will make it possible to make this work. I think I'm a pretty big believer of Force as an aggressive mechanic, as something that people will use to kind of play aggressive decks with. Full control decks, maybe it's going to be something a little bit more situational, where you might not be playing the base that gives you the Force, but you might just play a unit that gives you the Force guaranteed, or like something that gives you the Force guaranteed, and then you will have 1 or 2 or 3 more cards that will really bank up on the Force and really do something with it. So this is kind of what I'm currently stand on, and think that's how I see the Force being played in competitive. Thank you so much for following that video. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. It really helps a lot, and I'll see you next time for probably my review of the next PQ weekend. So good luck to everybody who's going to be competing in PQ this weekend. I'll see you next time.